Maybe he's just really into croissants, especially large, oversized croissants.
That much is evident. A huge fan of French pastry. Huge fan. Pop, what's going on, man?
How you doing, son?
Doing good.
Ready to spend 45 minutes breaking down 3 passes and a run by our starting quarterback?
Yep. Can't wait. Man. I'm just so you guys can see the smile on my face. I am so excited to be talking about some actual football. It is just we've been doing the t-shirt and panties practice all year, and finally we're talking actual football. So I'm just so pumped to be on that. So we're gonna talk. We're obviously going to talk a little bit of that preseason game. We're going to go over just kind of how we're feeling about it, do some risers, some fallers. We're going to go over the awards. So for those of you who were watching us last season, I know we got a lot of new eyes on the program. We do awards for every game. So we're just kind of getting warmed up for the preseason awards. We'll break that down for you when we get there. And then, of course, we're going to get into the some of the Miami stuff later in the pod as we do. And we might have a return of a special segment. So, guys, listen closely. We're bringing back a special segment. And this is the last time we're going to have to bring it back because it ain't going anywhere after this week. We had a pre-pod meeting. We
signature segment.
Yeah, we said we could not let this one slip through the cracks again. But let's get into it, man. Let's talk Commanders Jets. So everybody, we're just going to open up with it. Everybody wants to talk Jayden Daniels. It's that time, man. Jayden Daniels finally takes a snap under center as a Washington
Commander. Looks good in that uni too.
Oh, he does, man. He's tall. You see like we're used to short quarterbacks last couple of years with Heineke and Howell, right? And then you see him behind the offensive line and you go, hold on a second. That looks like a real NFL quarterback. I know he's a little slighter in frame, but he's tall and he takes that first snap and the first play calls, few runs, and his first pass. He throws to Eckler. He throws a screen pass. And Chris Paul just gets absolutely waxed off the line of scrimmage, and he floats it over.
He was playing out of position.
He was playing – well, he was drafted as a tackle, and then they moved him to guard, and now he's back at tackle. But he floats it over Eckler's head. And I had the overreaction of all overreactions, I'll be honest. I just went, oh, no. I was like, oh, it's happening again. It's happening again. I was like, we got another one. We broke another guy. And I told myself, I was like, it's just preseason. We're not going to care. And I'm literally watching this in my bed on my phone because it's at like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm just waking up. And then the rest of the drive continues. Obviously, the most famous play of the day, even overshadowing Jayden's touchdown, right, is that 3rd and 6. He went, as Dan Quinn says, he went Top Gun. And he checks the play, hits Diami on that deep ball, and man, I got so juiced after that. Pop, what was your reaction? Take us through that play.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the whole drive. I mean, seeing him out there, I think, to me, that play was amazing. And then you hear the backstory of it afterwards that he actually checked into it. In fact, I was talking to your Uncle Nick. Give a shout out to Uncle Nick. And he didn't know that story. He was watching the game later in the day on DVR, and he actually called me right after that first drive. And he was. I said, "Yeah, did you hear? Like he actually audibled into that play." He's like, "He audibled? Oh my god!" So yeah, I mean, it sounded like he went a little bit. It was funny how he was kind of smiling at the sidelines because he knew maybe it was something they didn't necessarily want him to do in that scenario. Mainly, I think, to make sure that he didn't put himself – it doesn't sound like they wanted to drop him back at all. Yeah. Honestly. I think this preseason game was much more about just him going through the routine, the pregame routine, getting the uniform on, knocking a little bit of the butterflies out and all of that. But then our boy gets under there, audibles out of a play, and throws a deep ball to Diami Brown, who's quietly having a really good camp as well. We'll get into that as amazing. So, yeah, amazing. I mean, amazing. And then, I think Jane Daniels just seems to have that it factor. And speaking of not overreacting to one drive, one touchdown, but how many opening drive touchdowns have we seen the
Yeah.
last few years, right? Um, and then it just had a little bit of everything. I mean, maybe not focusing just on that one play, break it down play by play, would be here all night. But just the overall drive as a whole, it had a little bit of everything. I like the fact that he missed that pass to Eckler because it gives him, he had some nerves, obviously
Yeah.
had some nerves, didn't set his feet, gives him something to think about. Hey, the next time, this is no thing. I can do this, right? So I like the fact that he's got something to improve on. You got to love the pass to Diami, and then being able to use his legs to score that touchdown. And how many times that when we're in the red zone, we get that that illegal motion or offsides call back 5 yards, we're done, we're dead. But we were able to finish, and
Yep.
yeah, it's exciting. I mean, like I said, he just got that it factor. It's another step in the journey, but I think it's great that we could continue to ride that wave. That it wasn't a dud. It wasn't a, it's another step in being encouraged and building on this thing for the season.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think overall, I mean, you did see a lot of running the football on that first drive. I mean, he only threw 3 passes, and 2 of them were behind the line of scrimmage, right? I think they didn't even want to put Daniels in a position where he had to command the pocket. Of course, he did in that
No,
one play where he goes downfield.
good
Um,
protection on that play
and
too.
yeah, very good protection, clean pocket. Did a good job of kind of stepping up to avoid that tackle at the last second there. But that quick release came in handy on that last play as he had the edge coming around the back end. But yeah, it was a lot of positives overall on that first drive. Obviously, you heard Allegretti get his name called. You don't love that, especially down in the red zone. I mean, that can be such a backbreaker when you're in those goal to go situations and it's just 1 or 2 yards. But you hope that kind of stuff works itself out in the preseason. You don't see a ton of that in the regular season because in the regular season, that more often than not will cost you 4 points, and you just can't have that. But we were able to finish. You saw Eckler mix in a little bit. Eckler only had 2 carries, but it was good to just see him out there. I thought Robinson looked great. I think it was like 4 carries for 20 yards, maybe 5 carries for 20 yards, 5 times for 20 yards. So he looked good. Um, I'm happy with that. I mean, he's just like kind of a guaranteed 4 yards almost every time.
Well,
Um,
we got a glimpse of how they're planning to use those guys together, and to me, that was a lot to be excited about and see the game plan, how it was called. I know they stayed pretty vanilla, but you
yeah.
could see that run game is going to be such a big foundation, and those two guys are going to be in and out, rotating quite often. It looked like, um, and I think that's going to be a difficult combo for defenses to deal with. Not only those two, but the threat of Jayden with his legs.
Yep.
I think you can have some things to really get excited about in terms of what this offense is going to look like.
Yeah. And if you saw like the bottom line is like it's so different now. You start with the ball on the 30-yard line if it's a touchback, right? So you start on the 30. If you're running the ball 5 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry consistently, you're just not going to be in a lot of positions where you got to go down the field. Like
Right.
until teams can take that away from you, if you can consistently pound the ball for 4 or 5 yards a carry, and then you've got Jayden passing in like 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 6 scenarios, like that is and I don't think that's what the offense will look like ultimately. I think there's a little more talent that we give credit for between Daniels and the skill positions. We will go down the field, but I mean that's a perfectly viable way to a win too. I mean, it's worked for the last 60 years. It's going to keep working. Um, but overall, I think the first team defense also looked pretty solid. I mean, they made a stop in the only drive that they were really out there. We didn't see pretty much anybody out of the starting defensive line
Defensive line, right?
play,
I
I
was going to say
believe.
first team defense.
Yeah, but that
First
first
team
team,
defense with Jamin Davis starting at on the edge, and he looked decent. Looked okay.
yeah, had a couple run fits that didn't go so great, but did all right. Still concerned about that defense overall. The DB room is questionable. I do think I want to put the brakes on some people with the whole Forbes thing. I'm not a fan of Forbes myself. I've talked a lot about that, but I do think, you know, he's not going to be playing outside all the time. And they're trying him there right now because it's preseason and there's no consequences they want to see. But I don't think he's going to be doing that all the time. But anyways, I think that might be time for us to kind of get into our first little mini segment here in terms of the preseason game. And so we want to talk about with our preseason game, we're going to do a little kind of trending up, trending down based off of what we've seen in these preseason games. And I think maybe we'll continue to do it at least for the second preseason game. Third preseason game kind of doesn't matter, but at least for the second one, we could talk about it too. But do you want to start off with some of these names, Pop, or you want
No,
me
no.
to
I mean,
go through them?
I'll set it up. You put out a tweet, which I thought was great. And you said these three players are trending up, three players are trending down. We'll just key off yours and we can talk about it if I've got comments about it. But why don't we give us a break? Why don't you give us a breakdown of who you think's trending up, who you think's trending down, and why quickly, and then I'll provide some input there. I thought that was really good.
So real quick, I mean, I had Jayden Daniels, De'Ami Brown, and Mikey Sainristil for trending up. And these are two of the three names are names that we expected. I don't think people necessarily expected De'Ami to be a part of that list, but he's had a really great camp so far. We saw him make a lot of plays in that preseason game. He continues to kind of get these highlights in training camp, and then for the first time, we see it actually translate to the field, and we see Jayden want to look his way. Jayden,
he had a highlight play on the joint practice and the preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So Jayden, personally, I wouldn't say his trajectory has changed at all, but I would say it's another step, more of the same, and the same continues to be he's acing the tests that we're giving him. We're not giving him a lot of tests yet, but he keeps acing the ones that we're giving him. So
Very
another
well
A plus for Jayden. I mean, 109 passer rating on 3 passes, but 109 passer rating and a touchdown is pretty decent. You're happy with that, right? So, moving forward off that, and Mike Sainristil just continues to be that ball hawk, just kind of like a human missile. He's just everywhere. So I love seeing that. I saw Frankie Louvu was kind of around the ball a lot as well. But those would be my kind of 3 risers out of that preseason game. And then 3 guys trending down, in my opinion. The 3 fallers from that game would be the kickers as a whole. I just don't think, we continue to hear some of the pundits in the area say it, but I just don't think the starting kickers on this roster at this point in the year.
Not sure where we're going to find him.
I mean, what's Joey Sly up to?
Honestly. He signed with somebody.
Oh, crap. Is it time? Should we build a Dustin Hopkins statue? See if we can get him back in the building after he was wronged. But yeah, I just don't think between Patterson and Ahmed, I believe. I don't think between these 2 guys, you've got the starting kickers on the roster. It's the disaster there. Forbes.
Joey Sly's with the Pats.
Oh, no.
No, wait. Joey Sly's 42-yard field goal puts Patriots up 10-0 in fourth quarter. So, yeah, I guess he's with the Patriots.
And also, just if you Google Joey Sly, the first thing that comes up is Joey Sly, New England Patriots place kicker. So it's all there. I appreciate a little bit of that back end research, Pop. But yeah, we got Emmanuel Forbes is another one of the fallers. We'll spend a bit more time talking about him at the end of the segment, I think. And then another faller is Chris Paul. This is a guy that I initially was like, hey man, he actually did pretty decent at left guard. Maybe he can battle there for starting position, and has just had a bad camp. They kicked him back out to tackle to try and support there. It's looked pretty awful out there, to be honest.
But I must say, I think the O-line has held up pretty well considering who they played. I mean, it wasn't awful. It wasn't a jailbreak like we've seen in many preseason and regular season games last year. And I think that had a lot to do with the play calling.
It's about to
which I'd like to get into a little bit more of in the next segment. But but yeah, I mean, it wasn't as bad as maybe I would have expected. Now, having said that, I think the Jets sat 28 players. So all of these things that we're saying probably have to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt in the sense that, we weren't going up against their best. They weren't going up against our best either. But yeah, I didn't think it looked as bad as I thought. I mean, I understand your Chris Paul take. I'm not taking away that, but Braden Daniels
Yeah.
was the other tackle who we're pretty low on, and you didn't hear his name called negatively too much.
I thought it was Trent Scott.
Trent Scott, Braden Daniels played as well.
Yeah, Trent Scott started at left tackle, and Trent Scott actually did all right. But I would
different name, same point, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I would say Chris Paul did not like what I saw there. Consistently was getting beat, if not off the edge. I saw him get beat inside a couple times, which makes me uncomfortable because you're never supposed to get beat inside as a tackle. That's how you get your quarterback killed. So obviously, if Chris Paul is starting at right tackle during the season, we have a serious issue because I'm not sure he makes the roster. But we
talked about it, right? The O-line in general, you've got 3 tackles that you can somewhat rely on, and beyond that, it gets a little scary.
Yeah, you hope if you can get them healthy. So we'll see. But I mean, it's the other thing too. Like, you're just not going to give Brandon Coleman a shot at Toradol and get him in at left tackle for a game against the Jets, right? That's just not happening. That might be something that happens in week 4 if he's got a stinger or whatever, But that's not happening right now. But anyways, keep it moving here. The Emmanuel Forbes situation is tough, man. You don't want to call it what it is, but it's been not so good recently. And I know we want to continue to beat the drum about he was graded as a first round pick, but he was graded as a first round pick behind 4 other guys that were all on the board when we drafted him. So it's hard to project much positivity there, and especially when you just keep seeing like there's a touchdown pass and there's a Commander's DB who's on his back 5 yards behind the touchdown, and then you look up and it's number 13 and he barely got blown on over the course of the play and he fell over.
All right, now to be fair, it's a little bit of an exaggeration. It was pretty tight coverage, but it was a UDFA quarterback and a UDFA receiver that he got beat by. And the discouraging thing is you can look at it and go, tight coverage, but he did look lost. Those are the plays we needed him to start making. Now, corners are going to get beat, right? And if he was playing, they're the top wide receivers of the Jets, then you could probably live with a play like that being made and Rodgers. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I agree. It doesn't look good. I'm not going to defend Emmanuel Forbes at this point. It seems like this coaching staff is giving him every opportunity to step up and trying to coach him up, which I do think is good. But it definitely feels like one of those things where, he's punching above his weight or whatever you want to say, that it just seems like you just continue to hope that it works out. But like you said, it just doesn't look great right now. And he's going to be on the roster, and they're going to be dependent on him. And yeah, that DB room is still an area of concern, although it's great to see Sanistril flashing. And, there are other guys that maybe make it so that we're not completely dependent on Emmanuel Forbes. Yeah. But
yeah, you hope to see. I mean, that's the thing. That's the biggest thing in the preseason is you're going to keep things pretty vanilla, right? You're going to play man defense and you're going to keep it pretty simple. So I think you hope in a game between Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., somebody will have enough sense that we're not putting Forbes in single coverage on the outside almost ever. But you're going to see him continue to struggle in those situations, and it's just not what you want to see from your first round cornerback. That's just the end of the day. Like, you can't draft a corner in the first round at number like 17 or 18 and say, oh, but we can't put him in man coverage. Like, that's a failure. So that's tough. But on the positive side for the team, I think the Commanders' defense will keep him out of those situations. For Forbes himself, I'd put his over-under in burgundy and gold at 1.5 more years. But for the team, I don't see it being as much of an issue as it was last year, hopefully, because I think they will just put him down on the bench if they have to. But
Well, yeah, I mean
anyways,
we've seen this team, and maybe this will kind of lead into the next thing. Is like, I want to talk a little bit about what do we learn from this game, because I think there was some interesting nuggets beyond the obvious ones, right? Beyond
yeah,
Jayden Daniels and Emmanuel Forbes getting burnt, kind of like the headline pieces. What do we learn from it? And I think one of the things we learn is how big a difference coaching makes, right? And I think that you see the way the defense got coached up, and you mentioned them starting strong and looking good against at least the first team, offense that the Jets put out there. And that was really good to see. And I think, you look at offensively and you could just see that balance that we just were missing desperately. And not really just with EB, but even a bit with Scott Turner. They both tended to favor a pass first when they didn't necessarily have the personnel. And you're seeing, our coaching call the game in a way that, one, helps Jayden out as much as possible, understanding he's a rookie QB. Maybe he's way advanced beyond a typical rookie QB. But I think you heard Dan Quinn emphasize again after the game, I want to run the ball on offense and I want to be physical on defense. That's the identity that this team wants to have. And I think that running game with Eckler, with B-Rob, was just for a short period, one drive was on display. And then you saw the fact that read option play that Jayden was able to run was really interesting. But I think the other interesting nugget is when you look at two positions groups that I want to kind of focus on just quickly. You look at that depth chart at running back. You got B-Rob and Eckler, no brainer. But the next back end was McNichols. He's not a guy that I've talked about or heard much. I don't think his name has come up on our podcast yet, right? But here's a guy that kick returner, shifty guy. Somebody mentioned he's similar cast to like a J.D. McKissick, maybe a bit more of an Eckler than a B-Rob. And then Rodriguez came in there, 6 carries, 0 yards. So talking about another Ron Rivera draft pick who in his second year, how many running backs are you going to keep?
Yeah,
typically it's 3. Maybe you have Sinnott and a hybrid. And then I think just to talk, and then that lets you get in there. You look at tight end. You got Ertz, did not play. Definitely a lock for the roster. Bates,
starting
Turner, and Sinnott. All 3 of those guys look pretty good. What was amazing to see, we talked about De'Ami Brown's rebirth, right? Becoming more of a physical player. We're seeing Cole Turner, at least initially, becoming more of a physical player. That touchdown that Jayden Daniels scored, he blocked the guy into the back of the end zone. This is Cole Turner. This guy's not known for his physicality and blocking. So I think between those two groups, you're not going to keep 4 running backs and 4 tight ends. Maybe you can argue that Sinnott can be like a swing guy. You could do some blocking out of the backfield. But those are going to be some interesting decisions that get made at those positions.
I can't. If you rewind the tape a year, we'll talk about Cole Turner being physical in the preseason again last year, and we probably did it the year before.
I think we talked about him catching the ball.
For me, Cole Turner I got to see it in October. If I see Cole Turner do something in October or November, I'll start to believe it. But I've just been burnt so many times by him looking good in practice, looking good in the preseason.
I'm not saying it, just to clarify one thing, just for the Cole Turner chat. I'm not saying it so much from, do I think Kurt Turner's going to be a great player? I'd put Sinnott over Turner already. He seems to be in the mix. He started this game.
Sure.
Like he seems to be a guy that's actively in the mix that the coaching staff seems to like. And I'm just making the point. You can't keep all 4 of them more than likely.
Yeah.
Right? I think he's probably the 4th of those 4.
Yeah, I think he's the odd man out. I think if you do keep I would lean with this group, frankly. You look at Chris Rodriguez, man, that's like a 5th round guy that was drafted by the old administration, never really did anything except for in garbage time at the end of, the season when we were 4-13. That guy can't be guaranteed a roster spot. There's no way. So I think I would lean. I think you're more likely to see them keep 3 running backs and maybe Rodriguez as a practice squad candidate. And
makes sense.
You go and you keep 4 tight ends because
Sinnott can hybrid there.
Sinnott can kind of give you that fullback
Right.
situation if you want. I'm not sure you're handing Sinnott an inside zone, but he can give you that
Exactly.
fullback
That's
kind of
what I
Kyle
meant.
Juszczyk
Yeah.
situation there. Which is cool because you can do a lot of cool stuff with that personnel wise in terms of starting Sinnott in the backfield and then moving him down to tight end or whatever. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do there. But I think in terms of the tight end room, I think they probably lean towards keeping all four. I think right now the depth chart is probably um, Ertz, Bates, Sinnott, and then Turner. And I think you will see over the course of the season Sinnott start to make some impact plays. Maybe you look for like late October, early November, like that time that you start to see rookies come on, you'll see Sinnott start to come on then just because tight end, it's a tough position, man, and it does usually take guys multiple years. So that's the tight end thing. The running back thing, I think it makes more sense to go with McNichols right now at number 3. You do
Looks that
need
way.
that kind of like pass first running back there, and especially with the new kickoff rules, maybe he's a guy that you have returning kicks. Although I think we're going to get an interesting surprise at kick return. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think we're going to get an interesting surprise at kick return. So, are you ready to hop into the awards here, Pop?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's go. Let's get into this award segment here. Let's talk Sauce Award. So for those of you guys who don't know, this is how we do our awards. All right. Sauce Award is like the game's MVP. That's like the best player or stood out. It doesn't necessarily always have to be MVP, but it's like he's got the sauce this week. He's the Sauce Award. He's the guy that made the biggest impact play or his performance shaped the outcome of the game the most. Helmet stickers are usually kind of like your honorable mentions, and then we will give a Kakats of the game as well, which hopefully we'll have less competition for under this administration than we did the last one. Usually, Kakats of the game was more competitive than the Sauce Award for the majority of the Ron Rivera time. So hopefully, the Kakats of the game becomes less eventful. But Sauce Award this week, man, couldn't be more obvious. You got to give it to the rookie quarterback who checks into a 42-yard bomb down the field on a third down and runs in for a touchdown on a read option. That's got to be Jayden Daniels, right? Cool, calm, collected, look good out there. 2 passes, 1 behind the line of scrimmage, 1 for 42 yards. But we are excited, man. Jayden Daniels got to get your Sauce Award.
Yeah, I mean, in a Tanaya household, it's about Sunday sauce and football. So that's a little bit more sauce around background, but yeah, no question. Jayden Daniels is no brainer. Not enough said about
Yep.
him being the sauce award winner.
And then for our helmet stickers, you got to go De'Ami Brown. Ben Sinnott had a nice big completion down the field. He was 3 for 57. De'Ami Brown 2 for 55. And Pop wants to throw Jamin Davis in there. It's preseason. I don't care. I would have maybe gone
I've heard a
Sanders
couple of
Still or
the reporters say he had a nice game, and I was reading a Washington Post article, and they had him as they had positive comments about Jamin. I don't know. I wanted to
all
find a
right.
defensive player. What other
I
guy
love
would
it.
you put in? You get the honor of a fourth major tutty helmet sticker. Who else would you put in there?
I would have gone Sanders Still, but that's okay.
Okay,
But I'm good with Jamin Davis there too. Is
Sarah
we
still didn't play much.
gotta equal the net. Well, neither did Jaden Daniels, but he got the sauce award.
That's a good point.
uh, but I'll throw Jamin Davis in there. That's cool with me. Pop says he flashed early in the run game. I'll take him at his word for it. Believe it or not, preseason football, I'm not necessarily my most dialed in when I'm
He did. He
watching
made
it.
some really nice plays.
But
Even the announcers were talking about it, where he peeled off, held up the tackle, peeled off the tackle, and made nice stops in the run game.
yeah,
So,
so we'll go there. I was stuck with the NFL Plus Jets announcers, so
bless
I
you,
didn't get
son.
the insight that you did there. But Kikats of the game, missing field goals, descending into the kicker abyss. It's not good, man. It's not good. We need to find a solution here. Kicking is something that has screwed this team in the past. You see it at every level possible across the NFL when the kicking is not consistent. You run into issues. You saw what happened in the Super Bowl last year. One missed extra point away from winning the Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers. Now,
Yeah,
you don't know. Maybe they don't settle for 30, whatever. But they were one extra point away from theoretically having a chance to win if they make a stop on that last drive.
I think with the kicking game, it's more about what we've heard related to practice and maybe the joint practice. I mean, they did make 3 or 4 if you count the 2 extra points. One missed kick is nothing to get overly panicked about, but yeah, it just the very first kick being a miss, doinked off the bar there is not a good thing at all. And this could be a killer for what otherwise could be a much improved team. I hope we can find some consistency out of one of these 2 guys, if not someone else.
I think it's going to have to be someone else. I mean, you have I think there's 20 NFL teams are carrying multiple kickers right now, so somebody's going to get cut that'll be worth it. And I mean, we didn't talk too much about the situation. It was a pretty open and shut case, but we did go out and identify a solid veteran kicker, and unfortunately some off the field stuff kind of put us in this position. So this is not where we wanted to be, but stuff happens. Nothing goes perfect. Unfortunately, this happened. But you got to hope one of those guys kind of comes free in a kicking battle or something along those lines. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it was kind of good to see, Sinnott step up. He mentioned after the game that, to a degree, he got to show off more in a game than he's able to do in camp because a lot of his strength is getting people to miss tackles. It's those yards after catches, his physicality, which is difficult to show in practice because of the way they practice. So the one that I think maybe we'll end this section on this note, unless you've got something else. But the one we haven't seen much of, didn't see too a lot, even though he ended up with 2 catches in the game, is McCaffrey. McCaffrey is not really flashed in the way that we might have hoped going into it, and he's firmly not in that top 3 receiver conversation at this point.
He's firmly not in that top 4 wide receiver conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's even a better point.
I wonder with McCaffrey if practice squad is in play, because you've got.
That'd be disappointing, given where we drafted him.
Yes and no. You've got Terry, you've got Jahan, you've got Diami, then you've got Zacchaeus.
Yeah,
that's probably your top 4, right?
Yeah,
I think Zacchaeus is a lock at 4. But I think that 4, depending on order, and frankly, they didn't talk about this earlier, I think 2, 3, and 4 is a lot more negotiable than we initially thought. I think Dotson, you've got a similar situation where this is a guy that flashed 2 years ago now. Diami continues to come on and continues to play strong. They don't have that. They didn't spend the first round capital on Dotson. They don't have that loyalty, and they're going to put the best guy out there. If that's Diami, it might be, and I think a win-win, right? In my opinion,
the receiver is another interesting group, right? I think it ties to that tight end and running back discussion that we had. Maybe next pod we can dive deeper into that position group, but that's an interesting one. Are they going to keep 5, 6? And it ties into how many running backs do you keep, how many tight ends, how many offensive linemen do you keep. It's interesting. I think McCaffrey to practice squad would be a shocker.
Yeah, but if you're only keeping 5, McCaffrey has to be that number 5. And maybe they keep 6. I think they probably keep 6. And
I think so too.
But you don't know. He certainly has not taken on.
Probably Tremaine and McCaffrey would be my call. But anyway.
I think he's a project pick. He's only played the position for a couple of years. He's kind of a tweener guy. You don't really know, but they know the work ethic. They know what the need is going to be a couple of years down the line. I mean, I think this is Diami's last year on his rookie deal, whatever. But let's keep it moving here. Why don't we hit the 15 to 25, Pop?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, we're gonna hit our
lots to talk about. It's all good.
Hit our second segment for today. We're gonna do a little bit of Miami joint practice talk for you guys. So
joint practice and preseason game, both.
Yeah, we got another preseason game. This time it's Saturday at 7 p.m. So a little bit of a better time for me on the West Coast, a little 4 o'clock.
Are we going to Miami? Are we doing this?
Yeah, that should be our road game, right? I tell you what.
This time of year is not as great to be down there, but
if we see Miami in the regular season, that's a Las Vegas tier road game destination. That's got to be a top tier one, right? but I'm definitely going the Miami scouting report. Let's get into it here. I most talented offense in the NFL across the board.
They got Tyreek Hill. He'll put you up there regardless of anybody else.
We got Tyreek Hill, who was the best player in football last year, not named Pat Mahomes, and you could argue just was the best player in football last year.
Your
Period.
number one fantasy pick, right?
Yep, it will be until he's not. But yes, he's my number one fantasy pick for sure. You got Jaylen Waddle, who I think is a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. And I think that's a guy that if Hill goes down, you're having conversations about Waddle being a top 10 guy. Waddle's incredibly talented, great wide receiver, speedster as well. You've got Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert at running back, both just speedsters, and Mostert can bruise you. Achane, more of a make you miss and then blow you down the field, blow by you all the way down the field. Just a stud there. But man, Miami's good, and they're no slouches on defense either. So if you thought we were outmatched against the Jets, we are thoroughly outmatched against Miami, and we will see Tua actually play. Tua will actually practice, and he will probably play in that preseason game, would be my guess. Since it's the second preseason game, you usually see starters go for a half. I think maybe with Tua's injury history, he might only go for a couple series or something like that. And I think Tua is a damn good quarterback. I know people don't give him the respect, but I think you see a couple less concussions, and I think people are talking about him a little bit higher. But somebody's
Yeah,
got to
just
be
got to be able to
delivering those
stay on the
balls.
field. Yeah.
But yeah, that's my Miami scouting report. How much do you think the starters will play, Pop, and how much do you think they should play for the Commanders?
It's an interesting one. I think offensively, a lot has to do with the health of the offensive line, right? It kind of ties into another topic we've got here. But I mean,
Yep.
if our top three tackles are not able to go, I don't think they're going to be anxious. I think their number one priority is getting Jayden Daniels to game one, and I think that if we can't have our full starting offensive line, I think you're going to see. We talked about the deep ball that Jayden passed and almost like DQ going, great play, not thrilled he called that audible because they don't want to see him take any risks. And so I think the story this week that's going to evolve is how many of those offensive linemen are actually going to be available. Cornelius Lucas has had some personal issues he's dealing with. Hope everything's okay there. Wiley has tightness. We don't really know where. So you can speculate as to where his tightness is, but and then Brandon Coleman seems to be dealing with some sort of pectoral issue. I don't think he's, I don't know. It's early. We'll get burnt by that when we put this out on Thursday, but it doesn't sound real optimistic that he's going to be ready for this game, and he needs that work. It's kind of bothersome. So, how much will they play? I think it's going to be less than we think it should be. I'm not sure it's that full half. It might be 2-3 series instead of just the one and out. But I think a lot's going to depend on that health of that offensive line and who we're able to put out there.
At a certain point, because you assume no starters are going to play in that third preseason game, right?
Right.
You assume an absolute minimum amount of starters. But at a certain point, I'm going to put my Brian Mitchell hat on here. Are we really going to roll out Jayden Daniels with Wiley and Coleman for the first time in week one against Tampa? Or is our quarterback going to get no real game work with both of his starting tackles? At a certain point, if this is just soreness or if this is them trying not to, this ambiguous report of tightness with Wiley, at a certain point, we do have to get this guy a little bit of game work with his starting offensive line unless you're just that confident. So do we see them go in the third game, even maybe just for a series? It's interesting, man. I think
in the end, we really don't know. Like, we're just not sure how much playing time they're going to have.
Yeah.
Honestly, the preseason is just kind of, in a way, I'm just trying to have as much fun with it. Watch as many of the different guys as we can. The starting group, you just don't get real satisfaction from it, right? So yeah, I think they're going to, we don't know. We'll find out more through the course of the week. We're not sure how much you're going to play.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a quarter, but I don't think it's a full half. That'd be my assumption. And if I'm proven wrong through the course of the week, if DQ gives us more clues by the time some of you are watching this, great.
Yeah.
What I would like to see, of course, you'd like to see him get through a full half, but the most important thing of all of this coming out healthy. It's just is, I mean, I think the reality of football today, there was part of me that when you started hearing about all these guys that were sitting out the first preseason game, I was thinking, man, is this even worth it? Should they just, do the joint practices and show that live, right?
Yeah.
But then it turned out good. It turned out that Jayden Daniels got that first drive in, and we saw that great play, and it was a confidence builder, and it was very likely a good thing from him. Dan Quinn talked about getting his routine down, and he wants him to continue to work on that against Miami. What'd you like about the pregame routine? Those things people don't seem to value very much. Given the B-Mitch comment about just even if you're a little nicked up, play. But if they're hurt, they're hurt. I mean, if Wiley and Coleman are hurt, they're hurt. And I doubt we're going to see that combination and Jayden Daniels in this game, given where we sit right now.
Yeah, it's well, I think if you don't at least get Cornelius Lucas out there at left tackle, I think it's at a
He's
point
at least healthy.
Yeah. If you don't at least get him out there at left tackle, and I don't know what he's dealing with off the field, frankly, I'm glad it's staying private. These guys are people too. It's his life. It clearly must be pretty serious, and I hope everything's okay and he's doing all right. But if you can't at least get Cornelius Lucas at left tackle, why do you even put him out there? Why even? What's the point? What's the point? I don't see the point. I'm going the anti-B-Mitch route here. But if you can't get Cornelius Lucas out there at left tackle, run him out there for a series again and have him pass the ball 3 times.
Well, I was thinking that against the Jets when we heard none of the 3 tackles were playing. I was like, well, they're going to pull Jayden, but clearly they put him out there with the idea of being ultra conservative, right?
Yeah.
And more than likely, I think that's what you'll see, depending on the healthy offensive line. Maybe it's kind of a game time thing. If they feel like the protection's holding up and they're getting good production out of the offense and they're feeling fairly good about that, maybe he plays a little more. But I tell you, the second that you're not sure, get him out of there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. And if you think, Brandon Coleman can be 100% healthy and ready to go week 1, if he doesn't play at all, then don't play him, of course.
You don't love the fact that Brandon Coleman's not playing because you wonder how much he can get out of practice, although I know there's some one-on-one work. But if he's really trending to be the starter, it'd be great to see him get some work. But I'm not sure his health's going to allow it.
Yeah, we'll see. And you hope, injuries can happen anytime and they are bizarre. But this is a guy that was injured a bit in college, and that's why his draft stock fell. Some of injuries is a pain tolerance thing, right? Some guys are able to play through more things than others. Not calling the guy soft by any means. I mean, he could throw me off the top of a building in a second. But I certainly, you hope that this is not a sign of things to come with Brandon Coleman. But that's the breakdown on what we want to see for that game. Is there anything you're looking at on the defensive side of the ball, Pop? I mean, I don't really have an eye on
I think
much.
what we want to see, I think a key thing there, let's talk about players for a second because we've got a little bit of time, a couple more minutes here. Talk about players for a second. Don't you think that probably one of the big, you touched on it earlier, Jahan Dotson. Like we've got to start seeing Jahan step up and look like that first round pick and look like the guy that we thought he was in year 1. We gave him a pass last year because of coaching and overall vibe within the team. But he looks like more so far from what we've seen and heard, more like year 2 Jahan Dotson than year 1 Jahan Dotson, who we thought, well, good, really solid, good rookie season, and he's climbing. And it's scary, like all the thoughts around the sure hands. How we heard the stories, he always carries a football around with him. He doesn't have drops. Those sure hands are suddenly gone. And that just, to me, seems like a mental confidence thing than anything else because, catching the ball has nothing to do with size, speed, all those other attributes, right? It hits your
Yeah.
hands, you hang on to it. And I think Jahan Dotson to me is someone that we need to start seeing step up. And I really don't know where. It was interesting. He played deep into the game. Maybe that's just a question of bodies and availability, but you didn't see Zacchaeus in the second half of that game very much. Maybe we did. I could be wrong there, but I think he's a guy that this is a big game for as much as anyone else.
Yeah, I really think, I genuinely think there is more of a threat for Diami supplanting Jahan at 2 than there is for like Zacchaeus supplanting Diami at 3. I think. We'll see.
Well, if you
But
were
I
trying
think
to,
we're
if
gonna
you
do
think of combinations and who would make the most sense as a slot guy, Diami's not a slot guy, right? He's a down the field burner. We've seen him not love going across the middle very much. It is a part of his game he's going to need to improve on. So slot might come down to being between Jahan and Zacchaeus, or Zacchaeus and slot. Maybe it's a combination between Jahan and Zacchaeus and slot, or Jahan and Diami for that 2 spot, as you said. And it's interesting. I still think it's Jahan's number 2,
yeah.
but we're going to have to start seeing him performing, and showing it to us a little bit more than what we've
Let's
seen.
let's put a pin and try and remember to come back to the wide receiver conversation next week, because I think that's an
Absolutely.
interesting. I think that could be a full topic. I think that's probably the most competitive, and maybe not for the best reasons, but probably the most competitive position group right now on the roster. You have a combination of underperforming guys, underperforming brand name guys with overperforming lower roster guys. That is, I think, will be interesting for how that's going to shake out.
In general,
But
I like what you said earlier, right? Just to maybe, from my perspective, some closing thoughts on this Miami game. That is a high-powered offense. That's an offense that, again, we're likely to get the starting group. We're likely to see them. McDaniels is a great offensive coach and mind. He's going to look to, he doesn't seem to me to be a guy that goes half speed and anything when he's coaching. If he gets that group out there, he's going to try to put up some points. This would have been a team that we played last year and we got no shot, right?
well, we didn't have a shot
Yeah,
last year
exactly.
when we played them.
We got blown off the field, and it was one of those things leading up to the game. What do we look like? How do we compare? How does the defense? Defense is healthy for the most part. They just sack guys to not, play them, which was the right call. Fully appreciate it. But we get that start in D line, we get that full start in defense. How do they match up? What does it look like? That's going to be super interesting. Offensively, I think we'll be okay. I think you're going to continue to see Cliff Kingsbury things. We're going to see some good balance there. And I think they're going to slowly build with JD.
Yeah.
See how the audibles he calls next week. But we got to put a pin in talking about this backup quarterback battle for next week. I'm just joking.
Well, what a waste of a pin.
But what about you? Like, what do you think? Just wrap up your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a Miami team that, there's probably 20 defenses in the NFL that don't have a shot against them. So you don't want to roll over and quit, but at the same time, you got to go, is there any way we can affect what they're doing? We've got our work cut out for us for sure. I think the recipe to beat Miami generally has been get that temperature below 50 degrees and outscore them. That's pretty much the only way to beat Miami since McDaniel's taken over down there. You're not going to hold them to less than 28 points. So I'm not going to overreact to what's going on the defensive side of the ball against them unless Tua's not playing and Tyreek's not playing and Waddle's not playing and our starters getting torched by their backups. But even then, man, I'm not too worried about that because the only time we see Miami this year is if we run into them in the Super Bowl. So you can kind of just keep it moving and not be too worried about having to play them because we're not going to see them in the Super Bowl. We'll see the Chiefs.
I still think you want to see that this team be able to compete.
Sure.
But
it's preseason, man. It's like at a certain point, it's not too between the combination of like just the gap of how good Miami is and the fact that it's preseason, I'm not too worried about taking anything away from at least the
I
defensive side of the
disagree.
ball.
I disagree.
But
We got a coach up north here locally that takes preseason pretty seriously, and that program seems to do pretty well. I think it's important that we
okay,
don't just get blown off the field.
yeah, I'm
That would
not.
be a bad look.
We also had a coach that took preseason pretty seriously last year, and we beat that other coach, and we were 4-13. So you never know. The Detroit Lions were undefeated in the preseason in their winless year. Look it up.
There's none of that stuff really matters, right? What happened in the past, maybe I started it with Harbaugh, but it's about setting a tone. And I think Dan Quinn wants to set a tone with this team and setting a
Yeah,
tone of, well, it's okay. We got doors locked off of us because it's preseason. I get your point from a fan's point of view.
yeah, it's not
Don't panic.
a little more
But
nuanced than
I
that.
think we
But
want to see a different vibe from this group, right? And hopefully that's what we'll see. And I've gone on record to say my bold prediction is I think this defense is going to be much, much, much improved. Let's see it.
we shall
Let's
see.
see it.
We shall see. So I say we wrap up the preseason segment. You want to hit the Kikats of the week, Pop?
That's right. I forgot. Extra
Want to get
segment.
into it? Yeah, I mean, people have been waiting an hour for it. But we are going to get into it. We're going to drop the Kikats of the week back on you guys. Guys, those of you who are with us, got to be loyal fans, got to know about the Kikats of the week. But I think we'll probably end up clipping this up and you guys will see some other good stuff about it. Well, let's get into it, man. Kikats of the week this week, pretty clear, pretty easy. This guy, I feel like he might be the Kikats of the week champion all time. He's got to be up there. RG3 just setting the internet ablaze with the croissant picture. If you know, you know. Um, just no self-respect on the young man. You know, it's one thing when somebody does you dirty. You know, I've been known to hit Pop with some gnarly edits on the ice cream reviews. Right? It's one thing when you do another guy
Got to
dirty
bring
and
those back too.
you're a good sport about it. Right? It's another thing when you just hop on there and just absolutely just torch yourself, man.
Well, it's a
Like,
family
come on.
program, so we're not going to get into a lot of detail here.
I
But
don't even
needless
know if
to
we can show
say,
the picture.
it's a picture of RG3. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, sharing a croissant with his wife.
Enthusiastically sharing a
And
croissant.
it was one of those where enthusiastically sharing a croissant with his wife. That's beautiful. That's perfectly said. So you let your imagination run wild and do your research of what that means. But
God.
I remember like I'm scrolling Twitter and you just see the picture and then I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get into the comments on this one.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
just wonder like, does he know what he's doing?
Of
Does he
course.
honestly know what he's doing? He claims he stumbled into it. It was innocent, but he had to know. You put a picture like that out there, you got to know what the consequences are.
Look, man, if he stumbled into that, I got even more questions. I mean, in what world? That's not how you eat a croissant, man. It's disrespectful to the French. There's no way. He knew exactly what he was doing. I don't. He knew exactly what he was
So does
doing.
he
Just
deserve a
like,
kick out?
of
I
course,
mean, he's getting clicks, he's getting more exposure, his Q
of
ratings
course,
going up.
because you gotta have some self-respect, man. You gotta like. I could get more clicks if I started doing certain things on the internet. You gotta at a certain point. Like this is a guy that is so talented. He's such a great broadcaster. He's such. He really understands football in a great way in terms of the way he kind of breaks it down. Just a really talented cat overall, and somebody that could have a really great, respectable career in media, and just continues to shoot himself in the foot over and over and over again and destroy his credibility because all he cares about is that little bird notification keeps chirping at him. That's all he cares about. And it's
Maybe
so
he's just really into croissants, especially large,
that much is
oversized
evident.
croissants.
That much is evident. A huge fan of French pastry. Huge fan. It's incredible. I mean, God, I say we wrap this thing up, Pop. I mean, my goodness.
Nothing left to say. No,
What
this doesn't go. This only goes downhill from here. So
what in
let's
God's
wrap it.
name is going on out here, man? Let's wrap this thing up.
It's back. The Cacons of the
The
week is
Cats of the
back.
Week is back, guys. You earned it. You guys stuck through like 56 minutes of the program to get to this point, so you earned it. Maybe we'll get it in before 45 minutes next week, but let's wrap this thing up here. Pop, without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank you for another great week, everybody.